Hi everyone, welcome to this video on how to perform CRUD operations on the server side using the data manager in Syncfusion Angular TreeGrid. In this video, I will explain how to insert, update, and remove a record and how to delete multiple records in the TreeGrid using the data manager. As I explained in my data binding video, data manager is a component of Syncfusion library that acts as a gateway and interacts with both local and remote data sources. If you are not familiar with Angular TreeGrid editing, you can watch my editing video provided in the YouTube card. To explain these CRUD operations in Angular TreeGrid using Visual Studio IDE, I am creating a new ASP.NET Core web application with Angular as frontend. To start using the Syncfusion Angular TreeGrid component in this application, let me open the package.json file, and within the dependencies object, I am adding the package Syncfusion EJ2 Angular TreeGrid. I will build the application so that Visual Studio downloads this package within this application. Now let me open the appmodule.ts file and import the modules TreeGrid module, toolbar service, and edit service from Syncfusion EJ2 Angular TreeGrid and add them to the ng module decorator. These modules allow us to enable edit settings and the toolbar in the TreeGrid. And in the app folder, open the appcomponent.css file and import the CSS file from cdn.syncfusion.com to get the material styles for the TreeGrid component. In the app folder, you can see a list of components. I open the fetchdata component folder and the fetchdata.component.html file. I am removing the existing code and adding the EJS TreeGrid tag. First, let me add the edit settings and toolbar options to the TreeGrid. To do so, I open the fetchdata.component.ts file and remove the weather forecast related codes. I import edit settings model and toolbar items from Syncfusion EJ2 Angular TreeGrid. In the fetchdata component class, I add a variable edit settings as type of edit settings model and toolbar as type of toolbar items array. To assign values to these objects, I import the onInit from Angular core. Within the fetchData component class, I create the ng onInit method. And for edit settings variable, I assign an object with properties allow edit as true, allow adding as true, allow deleting as true, and mode as row to edit an entire row. I am setting the new row position to below so that whenever a new row is added, it will be inserted below the selected row in the TreeGrid. You can set any position, so top, bottom, above, and child. I assign the value for the toolbar object with an array of items add, edit, delete, update, and cancel. Now I am opening the fetchdata.component.html file and assigning the TreeGrid's edit settings property with the created edit settings object and the toolbar property with the toolbar object. Now I am going to bind the data to the TreeGrid through a remote call. To achieve this, I need to make use of the data manager and assign its instance to the TreeGrid data source property. So let me import the data manager and URL adapter from the Syncfusion EJ2 data package. In the fetchData component class, I am declaring a variable named data as a type of data manager. In the ng onInit method, I am initializing the data object with data manager by passing the URL as API tasks data source, where data source is the server side action method. I am passing the adapter as a new URL adapter to enable the communication between the data source and the TreeGrid. In the HTML, I am assigning the TreeGrid data source property with the data instance. I will define this data source method on the server side. For that, I will create an empty MVC controller class and name it tasks controller. Let me add the root as API tasks to identify the right method while calling action methods from the client side. I will create a models folder and create a tree data class to maintain my application logics as well as the data. I defined the properties for this class. I have added the task ID, task name, and so on. I am adding the task ID as a key to identify the entities uniquely. I add a public static method which returns a list of tree data and name the method getTree. In the getTree method, I am adding the code to add data to the created tree object for the provided parent, child, and child counts and grandchild count and returning the tree object. I add a public static property of type list of tree data and name it tree so that I can access the data from the controller class. Now I am going to add the action method data source in the tasks controller class to get the data from the tree data model. I open the tasks controller file and add a public method data source with a parameter data manager request. This parameter will receive the data in a specific format from the source. Thus, I have defined the type as data manager request, which allows me to retrieve the values of the built-in members from the source during execution. It is a built-in class available in Syncfusion EJ2 base. And to use this data manager request class here, I need to install the latest version of Syncfusion EJ2 ASP.NET Core package in my application using the NuGet package manager. I have already installed it in my application, and so I am directly referring the Syncfusion EJ2 base in this controller class. So now I can access it in the data source method. Let me access the model class within this method. Use the model's namespace. Within the data source method, declare a variable named treeData and assign the value by calling the model class treeData getTree method. This will return all the records we have generated in the model class. Now, I will add additional code with conditions to sort, skip, and take data from the data source. I return the tree data values as JSON. I am adding the attribute HTTP post since we are receiving the data from the client side and adding the root value data source so that I can access the method from the client side with this name. In the HTML template, using the eColumns directives, I am adding 4 columns to display in the tree grid. I have added the task ID, which is the primary key column. So I set the isPrimaryKey property to true and set the task name, duration, and progress. I save the page and run the application. Now I will navigate to the fetch data page. You can see the tree grid, but the values are not shown here. This is because the ASP.NET Core framework version starting from 1.0 has a camel casing problem while serializing JSON objects. So the field names passed from the model will be automatically converted into camel case. Here you can see the field names converted into camel case, but when you look at the actual field names that we declare in our model class, you will see the first character is in uppercase. To overcome this problem, let me open the startup.cs file. Within this configure services method, I am adding a JSON options as serializer settings.contract resolver as null. In the HTML, I add the tree grid ID mapping settings. Now I will save this setting and run my application. You can view the tree grid with the data loaded in it. Now you can see the data where the fields are retrieved in the same casing as defined in the data source. Now I will show you how to insert a new row in the Angular tree grid and save it on the server side. To achieve this, in the fetchData component class, I need to add the insert URL option in the data manager. I am assigning the name API tasks insert. This insert method needs to be defined in the tasks controller class. Let me open the tasks controller class file. I am adding a public method which returns type action result and the method name insert and receiving the parameter of type CRUD model. I am defining this CRUD model class with a property value of type tree data and a property key of type int to get the row's primary key value. An int property relational key containing the primary key value of the selected record in the tree grid UI helps us find out where to add the new row in the tree grid. A list of tree data type property deleted will be filled when you delete more than one row. I will explain this in detail while performing batch deleting. This CRUD model class is necessary here since in .NET Core, we need to define the client-side parameters sent by the TreeGrid component with a strong typed class on the server side to receive the parameters. I will explain in detail while inserting a row through the TreeGrid UI. Within the insert method, I find the parent index using the CRUD model relational key which contains the selected record's primary key value. And then I find its child records count since the new row position is set to below. And compute the insert at value based on the parent index and its child records count to insert the new record. I'm calling the tree data class tree property. Then I call the insert method by passing the insert at value and the parameter CRUD model value property, which has the new row data. Return the new value as JSON so that it can be used to notify on the client side. I am adding the attribute HTTP post since we are receiving the data from client side and root as insert. Let me place a breakpoint in this method so that we can check the past value while inserting a new row. I run the application. Select a row, add a new row, and click update. You can see the CRUD model object with details such as relational key and the value object, which contains the newly added row details. Let me run this. Now you can see the new record is added below to the selected row in the tree grid. Let me move on to edit the existing row values and update them server side. For that, in the data manager object, I add the update URL and assign the API tasks update string value where I will create the update method in the tasks controller class. I am opening the tasks controller class and adding a method public action result update again with the same parameter of type CRUD model. Within the method, I am adding code to find the edited task using the primary key task ID, assigning the new values to each property and returning them as JSON. I am adding the attribute HTTP post and root as update. Let me place a breakpoint in the method and run the application. I am editing this row, just adding the text modified and clicking the update button. In the parameter, you can see the value property holds the newly updated values within it. This code will update the data source record that matches the task ID. Run the application and you can see the updated value in the tree grid. Now I will show you how to remove a record from the data source on the server end. In the data manager object, I define the remove URL and assign the value API tasks remove. In the tasks controller, I will create a method remove with the same CRUD model as parameter. Within this method, I add code to remove the record that matches the past record's key value. I am returning the parameter value as JSON. Let me add the HTTP post and root attributes. Then I place a breakpoint in the method and run the application. I select the last record with the task ID 39 and click the delete button. You can see the parameter key with the value 39 is passed here. This code will remove the record with the task ID 39 from the data source. Let me run this. You can see that the row with task ID 39 has been removed. Let me move on to the batch deleting operation on the server side. To delete multiple rows, I need to enable multiple row selection in the TreeGrid component. To achieve this, let me import the selection settings model from the Syncfusion EJ2 Angular TreeGrid package. In the fetch data component class, I create a member variable named selection settings of type selection settings model. In the ng-oninit method, I assign the value for selection settings with the type multiple. In the HTML template, I will assign the selection settings property with the selection settings object. I save the files and run the application. Now I can perform multiple selection in the TreeGrid. Now in the data manager object, let me add the batch URL property with string API tasks batch delete. In the tasks controller class, I am implementing the method batch delete with the parameter CRUD model object. Since deletion can be performed on one or more rows, it receives a list of records while deleting. These details are received in the deleted property. Thus, I have declared this property here at the time of CRUD model class creation. Within this method, I am finding the deleted tasks and removing those records using the task ID. Finally, I return the deleted records as JSON. Let me add the HTTP post and root attributes. Let me place a breakpoint here and run the application. Now I select the last three rows with task IDs 29, 37 and 39 and click the delete button. You can see here in the CRUD model deleted property, the records with IDs 29, 37 and 39 were received. This code will remove those records from the tree list. I am running the application and you can see the last three rows were removed. Finally, let me summarize the main points. I have explained how to load data in a TreeGrid using a remote call and how to perform insert, update, remove, and delete operations in the TreeGrid using the data manager. You can download this featured sample from the link provided in the below description. If you found this video useful, click the like button and subscribe to our channel to get notifications for our new videos. Thanks for watching.